I thought making it to the WNBA would finally silence all the doubts, that once I stepped onto that court, everything would make sense. The years of work, the pressure, the expectations, all of it would feel worth it. From the outside, it looks like the moment you arrive here, you've won. The lights, the crowd, the noise, the jersey with your name on it. People assume that reaching this level means confidence becomes automatic, that belonging comes instantly. But the truth is, nobody tells you what happens after the noise fades. Nobody talks about the quiet moments that follow the applause, and nobody prepares you for how alone you can feel. Even when you're surrounded by the best players in the world, in my first days, everything felt unreal. Walking into the locker room, seeing names I grew up watching, sharing space with people I'd admired from a distance, I remember thinking, this is it. This is where I've always wanted to be. And yet, even in those early moments, something felt different. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. Conversations were happening around me, routines were already in place, relationships had history. I was there, but I was new. And being new at this level isn't tamed out. It's quiet. You listen more than you speak. You observe more than you react. You're constantly aware of where you stand, even when no one is actively telling you anything. I'd sit there tying my shoes, listening to laughter, inside jokes, shared memories, and feel this strange mix of gratitude and distance at the same time. No one was unkind. No one pushed me away. But belonging doesn't come automatically just because you earned a spot on the roster. It comes slowly through time, trust, and moments that don't happen all at once. That realization hit me harder than any defense ever could, because I had always believed that basketball would speak for me, and that if I worked hard and played the right way, everything else would fall into place. But here, effort alone didn't erase the feeling of being on the outside looking in. The hardest part was that I didn't feel like I was allowed to talk about it. You don't want to seem unsure. You don't want to look like you can't handle the pressure. You're living your dream. How could you possibly complain? So you keep it inside. You show up early, you stay focused, you smile. And when practice ends, when the arena empties, when the noise finally disappears, that's when the loneliness shows up. Not loudly, quietly sitting next to you, asking questions you weren't prepared to answer. And that was the moment I realized something nobody had warned me about. Making it to the WNBA doesn't end uncertainty. Sometimes it's where a different kind of uncertainty begins. When the season actually started, that feeling didn't fade the way I hoped it would. If anything, it became more noticeable once the routine set in. Practices, meetings, workouts, travel, everything moved fast, and I moved with it. But internally, I still felt like I was catching up to something invisible. The locker room was full. It often felt quiet in a different way. Conversations flowed easily between people who had already built trust over years. They knew each other's habits, moods, rhythms. I was learning all of that in real time, trying to fit in without forcing myself into spaces I hadn't earned yet, and that balance is exhausting. You don't want to disappear, but you also don't want to disrupt. So you stay alert, constantly reading the room, adjusting without anyone asking you to. Road trips made that feeling stronger. The bus would be loud at first, music playing, jokes flying, everyone settling into something familiar. Then slowly, the noise would fade. Headphones on, phones out. People retreating into their own comfort zones. I'd look out the window, watching cities blur past, and feel this quiet distance growing. Not from the team, but from home. From the people who knew me before basketball became my full identity. There's something about travel that amplifies loneliness. You're constantly moving, but nothing around you feels permanent. Every hotel room looks the same. Every night ends in silence. Those hotel rooms were where everything really hit. You come back after a game where thousands of people watched you perform, where the arena was loud, where adrenaline carried you through every possession, and then suddenly, you're alone again. No crowd, no noise, just the hum of the room and your own thoughts. That contrast messes with you. You sit there replaying the day, not just the game, but every interaction. Every moment you wondered if you said too much or not enough. You ask yourself why this feels so heavy when you're living the dream you worked so hard for. And the worst part is the guilt that follows. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way, that you should be grateful, that others would do anything to be here. So you push it down and move on. But loneliness doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits quietly. And for rookies, it waits in the background while you're trying to prove you belong. That's when I realized the hardest part of this transition wasn't the game itself. It was learning how to sit with yourself in moments where nobody is telling you you're doing okay. As the weeks went on, I started noticing how that loneliness quietly changed the way I experienced everything else. It wasn't just about being alone anymore. It was about carrying a weight no one else could see. I became more careful with myself, more aware of how I reacted, how I spoke, how I showed emotion. There's an unspoken expectation at this level that you're supposed to handle everything without flinching. You're a professional now. You're living your dream. So even when you feel disconnected, you keep it to yourself. You don't want to seem unsure. You don't want anyone to think you're struggling mentally. That pressure to appear strong all the time can be suffocating. I'd catch myself smiling automatically, saying I was fine, even when I wasn't sure what fine actually meant anymore. And late at night, when everything slowed down, that's when the thoughts got louder. I'd replay conversations, moments in practice, small interactions that probably meant nothing, wondering if they mattered more than I thought. I'd watch teammates who looked settled, who moved through the space with ease, and I'd start comparing myself without meaning to. Why does it look so natural for them? And why do I feel like I'm constantly adjusting? That comparison was dangerous because it made the loneliness feel like a personal flaw instead of a natural phase. I started questioning whether I belonged yet, not because of my skill, but because of how isolated I felt. And the hardest realization was this: no one was going to step in and reassure me through it. Belonging in this league isn't handed to you with words. It's built quietly, over time, through consistency and patience. Understanding that didn't immediately make things better, but it did make something clear. This feeling wasn't here to break me. It was here to shape me, and whether it did one or the other depended entirely on how I responded to it. That realization forced me to slow down in a way I never had before. I understood that I couldn't keep waiting for something external to fix how I was feeling. No conversation, no moment, no game was suddenly going to make everything feel settled. So instead of fighting the loneliness, I started observing it. I paid attention to when it showed up the most and why it was never during the game itself. It was always before and after, in the quiet spaces, in the moments where structure disappeared and I was left with myself. Once I saw that, I stopped treating the feeling like an enemy and started treating it like information. I realized that being new in this league meant standing on unfamiliar ground every single day, and discomfort was simply part of that transition. I began creating small routines that gave me a sense of control when everything else felt uncertain. Morning workouts where I could move without expectations. Quiet time before practice where I reminded myself why I loved basketball long before it became a job. I stopped trying to measure my experience against how others looked, because appearances are misleading at this level. Everyone here had already survived a version of this feeling, even if they never talked about it. That understanding softened the loneliness. It didn't disappear, but it lost its sharpness. It stopped feeling like something permanent and started feeling like a phase I was moving through. And in that shift, I noticed something subtle happening inside me. I was becoming more comfortable with myself, less reactive, more grounded. And I wasn't looking for belonging anymore. I was letting it form naturally, one day at a time. With that shift came a different kind of awareness, one that didn't arrive all at once but slowly settled in. I started noticing how much quieter my mind felt when I stopped fighting the process. The loneliness was still there, but it no longer felt like a weight pulling me down. It felt more like space. Space to think clearly, space to understand myself without noise or comparison. I wasn't searching for belonging anymore, and that changed everything. I began to feel more present in practices, more grounded during games, less consumed by what others might be thinking. The moments that once felt awkward or heavy started to feel neutral, even manageable. I realized that confidence doesn't always come from feeling supported. Sometimes it comes from realizing you can stand on your own when support isn't obvious yet. That was a powerful lesson. I stopped seeing loneliness as a weakness and started seeing it as part of the foundation I was building. It was shaping me into someone who could handle uncertainty without panicking, who could stay steady even when nothing around me offered reassurance. And once I embraced that, something unexpected happened. I felt stronger, not louder, not more visible, just stronger inside. The isolation that once made me question myself was now teaching me self-trust. It was showing me that growth doesn't always look like progress while it's happening. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like patience. And learning to be okay in those moments was preparing me for more than just basketball. It was preparing me for everything that comes with being in a space where expectations are high and comfort is rare. That's when I understood this wasn't just a phase I needed to survive. It was a phase that was shaping who I was becoming. As I moved deeper into the season, I started realizing something that surprised me. The loneliness I once feared was slowly turning into one of my greatest teachers. It forced me to listen to myself in ways I never had before. When there was no crowd noise, no constant feedback, no reassurance coming from the outside, I had no choice but to sit with my own thoughts and understand them. I learned how easy it is to confuse noise with confidence and how rare it is to build confidence without it. I began trusting my preparation more than my emotions. Some days felt light, some days felt heavy, but I stopped letting either one define me. I understood that consistency mattered more than comfort. There were moments when I still felt isolated, especially on long road trips or late nights after tough games, but those moments no longer scared me. Instead of asking, why do I feel like this? I started asking, what is this teaching me? And the answer was always the same. It was teaching me patience. It was teaching me independence. It was teaching me how to stay grounded when nothing around me was familiar. I noticed that the more comfortable I became with myself, the less I needed validation from anyone else. I wasn't chasing connection anymore. I was allowing it to develop naturally, and that changed how I showed up every day. My energy was steadier. My focus was clearer. I wasn't trying to fit in. I was simply doing my work. Slowly, I felt more at ease in spaces that once felt intimidating, not because the environment changed, but because I did. The loneliness didn't disappear, but it stopped defining me. It became part of the journey instead of an obstacle in the way. And in that quiet strength, I realized I was becoming someone who could handle much more than I ever imagined. Looking back now, I understand that loneliness wasn't something I had to escape from. It was something I had to grow through. It didn't mean I was weak or unprepared or behind. It meant I was standing in a space where real growth happens, without shortcuts, without guarantees. The WNBA didn't take comfort away from me. It taught me how to exist without it. It showed me that belonging isn't built through loud moments or instant connections. It's built quietly through patience, consistency, and staying true to yourself when no one is reminding you that you're doing okay. That lesson changed how I see everything, not just basketball, because loneliness shows up anywhere. Growth is real. New cities, new roles, new responsibilities, new versions of yourself. And once you learn how to stay grounded in that space, once you stop running from it and start listening to it, it loses its power to scare you. It becomes a sign that you're moving forward, not backward. If you're watching this and you feel alone in a place you worked hard to reach, know this. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're becoming. And sometimes the loneliest part of the journey is also a part that builds the strongest version of you. If you want more honest, real stories about the mental side of professional basketball and the moments nobody talks about, stay here, subscribe, and keep walking this journey with me.